Hey everyone, in this video I'll be covering the best settings for single player in Palworld's 1.0 update. I'll be breaking down some simple quality of life as well as just the settings that you want to change if you want to have an easier experience at certain parts of the game. So the world settings are accessible when you first load into the game in your world. Now, I'm going to show you guys my specific world settings here that I like to run. I typically just run with the one times for most of these here. However, there's a few things that I prefer to have off. For example, structure deterioration rate. This having it at 0 is nice because you can set up a base and then have a world outside of it. This is especially nice if you want to set up like a new water base, which is accessible at level 23 now after the latest update, and then have like a little bit of a city outside of it. It's also nice if you want to set up structures like stairs leading to places like dungeons, so I highly recommend having the deterioration rate off, as this just makes the game that much better. I also like to change the damage to structure multiplier to 0.5 times. You cannot change it any more than that, but having these at minimum will just make it easier for you to set up large scale bases. Now, another setting that I do like to change is the time to incubate massive eggs. So this just set it to 0 since eggs are kind of an annoyance and you do have to wait for other steps in the process. So I like to have that off. And you can also change the meteorite supply drop interval here. It's regularly set to 180 minutes here, but changing this allows you to get some of the more annoying things like the applied books, so you can actually go a lot lower with this. I wouldn't recommend having it at 1, but like anywhere from like 20 to 30 minutes is pretty solid. These will end up making meteors drop quite a bit, and the scale for this is actually really hard to fine tune, but you can change it by like single digits here by using like the left key or the D-pad. And honestly, around 30 minutes ends up being a solid amount too. For the rest of this, I have a mod that lets me increase the amount of bases that I'm able to build, so having that up to 50, but I like to max it out as high as possible. This does impact your overall processing load, but I find that having at 15 pals, 50 bases, and no structure limit as well. I don't have any drops. I am running an RTX 4070, but I do play with the graphics set to like medium at times. I also like to have the death penalty to no drops. Obviously, that's more so like your own personal preference if you want to turn into a Souls-like or not. And then I have raid events and Predator Pals on. And then also when we come down here, enable fast travel, and I don't have it to bases only. And the global pal box, which you can kind of exploit if you want. I do have guides on how to duplicate pals, which is actually very easy to do. Now, I'll go all the way through these settings here because some of them will depend on how you prefer to play. And the autosave, I like to have it up around 5 minutes or here. But if you're doing certain exploits, you do have to put it to the maximum amount of time. Now, the day and night speed, there are pals that are only available at nighttime, so I leave that as is. But if you don't like the night, or if you're not using any mods, because there are some mods to make it easier to see at nighttime, you can put that down to like 0.2-ish, I would recommend there, but I'm leaving that all at 1. Experience rate. Now, I've found that the 0.6 to 0.8 is actually best if you want to have like, they actually severely buffed the overall XP that you gain in this game, and that just makes it a little bit more balanced. You don't over level your skill tree. You can obviously mess it up and put that up a lot higher if you want to have higher experience, higher capture rate. Pal appearance rate, this one does oftentimes cause a lot of performance issues for people, so I do keep these all at a 1.0, but if you want to make something a little bit easier, you could just take these up to 2. And the capture rates in this game are quite generous. This is more so just for quality of life, so you could buff that up. Now, depending on how you find the combat in this game, the damage from pals multiplier, if you want to extend the amount of combat time that you'll have, you put these both at 0.5. But this is more so like if you want to make the game really easy, you can obviously buff that up. I do find that the base game settings for this is nice. You can put the hunger depletion rate down as well. That's something that some people don't like to play around with, as well as the stamina reduction rate, so you can have your mounts fly around for a lot longer. Health regeneration rate isn't like super high, but if you find it to be an annoyance, this can be an easy one to buff up, or you can then change the amount of health that they get in the PAL box. Now, the damage from the player, you actually do quite a bit of damage, so if you want to have the pals be more important, you can take your player damage down to 0.1, 0.2, 0.3-ish, and change so that's the damage from player, and the damage to player, if you want to make it so that it's a little bit more challenging and you have to dodge more, put that up to 2. But honestly, this is something you can fine tune to your own personal preference. I personally like to have these all at 1.0. Just the game is pretty well balanced around that. The stamina reduction rate, though, some people like to have that completely down to 0.1, so you can change that depending, again, if you find that the exploration is a bit more annoying. Work speed multiplier, it depends if you want to, if you're building a very large base and you just want to play on creative, put this all the way up and just quickly build your bases. But otherwise, I leave it as is, as you're going to have pals that'll be good for work. And also grazing item production rate, this can actually be a really nice one to change. If you set up like a heavy cloth farm, which is a good way to get gold, you can actually max it out to like 30 times the production rate, and then you can sell those off for a lot of gold. I find that this is more than fine at 1.0, but it is something that you can actually change. Now, for the maximum number of dropped items in the world, this will depend on your performance. I go with 50 here. For whatever reason, I do get stutters in this game, so I found this to work really well. Now, this is where the grind really ends if you want to change your world settings. Gatherable item multiplier. You can buff that all the way up, and it just makes things obviously much smoother. So some people do like to have like a 2x multiplier just to make it a little bit easier. So if you want to have like that the quality of life boost. However, some people would prefer to have it at like 10 times just so they don't have to breeze. They don't have to go through the game and do some of the more annoying grinds for things like oil. The health multiplier doesn't really matter too much. You're going to destroy it pretty quickly anyways. And the item weight rate. This is actually a nice one to change down to 0 if you wanted to make items just not weigh anything. This is one of the more annoying things about this game, so this can be really good. And also the durability loss multiplier to 0. These two can be pretty nice quality of life changes as well. So if you want to have like an easier time playing, I'm going to recommend these settings here. Experience rate 1.3, this is just what they recommend for the easier playthrough, and you'll have more than enough. Pal capture rate doubled, just nice for capturing. The appearance rate also boosted. I like to have, as you're going to experience more pals, but if your performance drops, drop this immediately. I also like to buff up. The base game recommends having player damage increase. I actually prefer to have, like, if you were to change anything, increase the pals damage to maybe like a 1.2. I find that it's more than enough, but we leave that around 1 and take the damage to pals to 0.5 for an easier time. We're then going to come down to damage to player multiplier 0.7, so you still take damage, but just not as much. And you can fine tune that how you want, as you can decrease it to make it a little bit easier. I also like to have the hunger depletion at 0.1 just so that it doesn't go down as quickly, and stamina reduction at 0.7 just for a little bit faster that you can explore the world. Work speed multiplier at 3 times just to build things a little quicker. Obviously, we're taking the damage to structures down. Gatherable items multiplier 2 or even 3 times. And then also the dropped item multiplier at the same amount there. Item weight 0. And then you can adjust the meteorite supply drop to your choosing. And I find that to be pretty solid settings overall. Now on the flip side, if you want a more hard experience, taking the experience rate down can actually make the game just feel a little bit more balanced. I also like then have the pal appearance rate still increase. That obviously makes it so you find more pals, but it's just a little bit more chaotic. Now there's a couple changes you can make here to pal damage multiplier, taking it down to 0.8. I find the game's pal damage is not too crazy, so I leave that as is. But if you want your pals to have a bit more challenge, you can take that up to like 1.2 or something like that. I leave all these the same, and damage from player multiplier down to 0.5. Just making half less damage actually changes how you play the game, makes you more reliant on your pals, and then increasing the damage that you take by 1.5 times. Or you can even do like a 1.2 there to make it a little bit more challenging. I find this works great as well. The rest of these we'll leave out at 1 times. I like to have the grazing item multiplier a little bit higher. Just again, it's not very quick, so you can make it easier for breeding by making cakes easier, by having bee guard drop honey. Gatherable items multiplier. The game recommends 0.5. You can go with that, but I find that it's more than fine to leave these at 1.0 for both that and the dropped item multiplier. And then we're going to leave everything else as is. It's mostly about the player damage if you want to have a more hard experience. So again, just wanted to show you some hard options as well. So yeah, that's some settings to make your game a lot easier or make it a little bit more challenging if you want. So let me know if you have any questions around that. Hit the subscribe button below if you enjoyed, and we'll catch you guys all in the next video.